Monday.
It is 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 19th, and I hereby call the meeting to order. And once again, thank Andrew Duffel and the Research Park at Florida Atlantic University for once again allowing us to hold our meeting at their beautiful facility while our conference room remains under construction. Florence, please call the roll.
Mr. Tucker.
Here.
Mr. Nobles.
Here.
Mr. Fogel. Ms. Bud. Here. Dean, or Mr. Fogel.
Yep.
Mr. Now.
Here.
Mr. Pollock.
And I see a quorum is present. Before moving on, I would like to mention this wonderful FAA safety award that was presented to the airport. And Travis was in Atlanta to pick this up for us. So thank you very much. There's a beautiful letter that accompanies it. And as we all know, safety is the highest priority here at the airport. So this is, again, a great reflection of all the fantastic work that all of you have done to keep us safe and secure. And we really appreciate that on behalf of the board. And we have yet something more to put in our fast growing trophy case. We might even have to get a second one. This keeps up, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So thank you all very much. Item 2, approval of minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the January 22nd meeting. Second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And hello, Mitch. Item 3, agenda changes. There are no items on the consent agenda. Item 4, public requests. If any member of the public wishes to provide a comment on any item, the time to do so now. Please complete a public comment card identifying the item which you wish to be heard and provide it to Florence. The public comment cards are located back of the room. Each member of the public wishing to comment will be provided with 5 minutes to do so. The chair does reserve the right to move the public comment opportunity on a specific agenda item to that point in the agenda when that item is to be considered and or to extend the allotted time per speaker. Florence, any public comments?
There are none at this time.
Thank you. Item 5, consent agenda. There are no items on the consent agenda. Item 6, federal, state, and municipal input. Ms. Bennett.
There is none.
Item 7, financial report. Mitch, please introduce this item when you're ready.
I am ready. Okay, hey everybody, January finance report. January marks the month, first month of the quarter, second quarter of our fiscal year. There's still some larger variances compared to budget on the expense side, and these variances are due to the timing of certain projects and events, as well as billing issues with customs regarding their overtime fees. I did review the detailed report in January, found everything to be in order, and I'm going to turn it over to Robert Abbott for the report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fogel. So in your package is the financial report through January 2025. Total operating revenues are approximately 2.7 million, and that's 1% below budget year to date. Total operating expenses are approximately 1.8 million, and that's down about 18.5% to budget, and that's due to the timing issue for projects and events and buildings. Net income before depreciation is approximately 934,000. So on behalf of our management and the Secretary Treasurer, we respectfully present the financial report to the airport authority.
Thank you, Robert.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 8, tenant reports and requests. There are no items in that area to report. Item 9, executive director and staff reports. Item 8, presentation of the operations and noise abatement report for the month of January 2025. Anna, please present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is the operations and noise abatement report for January. In January, there were 7,904 operations, which is a 19% increase from January of last year. Fuel deliveries were up 10% compared to last year, as well as avgas was up 7%. We had two noise calls from 2 different households that filed concerns in the month of January. During the month of January, Customs had 207 aircraft clearings, which is an increase from 185 total clearings during January 2024, and there were no vessel clearings during that month. The 207 aircraft arrived from 25 different countries, which Austria was the furthest last month. There were 65 different after-hours clearings in the month, of which 36 occurred on days when the facility is normally closed. That concludes the operations report for the month of January. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How's it going on TFRs?
It's busy. I think, Rob, you have some data on the increase, the percentages of increase during the TFR weekend. On the plus side, we have had some very good communications with FAA and with the two FBOs, as I may have mentioned to each of you. We spoke with the head of air traffic. I've spoken with him a few times before the TFRs began, to try to get some focus on Boca Raton, just based on what we experienced the last time, what we experienced during the holiday season, which was incredibly busy, which led to some periods of ramp closures, et cetera. So based on that focus, we've had multiple meetings. In fact, we have regular standing meetings with FAA air traffic and with the FBOs before and after the TFRs to identify best practices. So as a result, they've been going a lot more smoothly. We did have a couple of ramp closures this weekend, right, Travis? But that, you know, again, we were able to proactively manage that and identify when they're going to happen ahead of time, so that there's proper notice that's given to pilots, and it's all coordinated with FAA. So Rod, do you have handy the totals that you?
I have it memorized from earlier. Comparing this most recent President's Weekend, President's Day weekend with the TFR to last year's President's Day weekend. Last year, was around 200 total operations, where this past weekend was around 500, so around an 80% increase. There's obviously a huge difference in touch and go activity. So last year there were 50 touch and goes over the weekend. This year there were 4. So most of that increase is IFR jet traffic, which is a direct impact of the TFRs. And with the TFRs as well, the FAA has changed the departure paths for airplanes departing the airport to avoid the 30 nautical or the 10 nautical mile ring over Mar-a-Lago. So the flight paths have changed. And I think our next board meeting, we'll see a few more noise concerns as a direct impact of that. So, yep, significantly busier this past weekend.
And you may have seen that we've put out some notices to the community as well as to the pilots. And most people, when we talk with them and explain that these are temporary, and the reason for the temporary changes where people may not normally see flights over their homes, as the aircraft are routed around that inner ring to avoid the restricted area surrounding Mar-a-Lago, they're flying over areas that people don't typically see flights. And so for the most part, when we explain to people the reason for the increased activity or the presence of aircraft over their area, they're understanding of that. But we're continuing to put out information to the neighborhoods to make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on.
So did I hear correctly? It was 200 last year this time and 500.
Yes.
For the weekend, yes. And the important thing to note is, because believe it or not, we had to explain this to the FAA itself, because they're looking at raw numbers and saying, well, you know, the overall your traffic may have only increased by 3% over the year. Well, it's the type of activity that happens. It's less flight training, and it's an increase in the instrument flight rules, aircraft, the IFR, arrivals and departures, and it's business jets. And in the market as well, we've seen over the last few years, as you may remember, that the business jet market is veering towards bigger airplanes, you know, wider wingspans, bigger aircraft. And so where in the last round, maybe occasionally we saw a large, Global Express, it's a preponderance of these larger aircraft, which take up a lot more ramp space. The other thing that has helped quite a bit is, you may remember that we did a taxiway widening project a few years ago in response to the TFRs and the larger aircraft utilizing the airport. That is also helping in terms of the safe flow of aircraft on the ground. But I would like to acknowledge the support that we have gotten from FAA at a very high level, based on us sort of, just raising the issue to the head of air traffic. That's trickled down. He's appointed people at the local level as well as some headquarters oversight to ensure that our needs are met, and that there's proper coordination throughout the system when we're getting to that saturated situation on the ramps. And also the two FBOs, I know John is here, Robert is not here today, but they have responded very well in terms of managing their arrivals and departures so that we are reducing the number of, the opportunities for bottlenecks on the ramps.
Is there some type of magic number, you say bottleneck or crisis? Is there a number at which we go, okay, 200 to 500, we got through the weekend, a couple of closures, everybody, ended up happy, I assume, at the end of the holiday weekend. At what point do you go 600, the yellow light goes off, 800, a red light goes? Where do we go, hey, we need to do something, we need to divert, we need something?
What we have worked out with FAA and with the FBOs is that when they reach at 50% saturation on the ramps, it really depends on the size of the airplanes coming in and as well as the volume as well, obviously rather. So if we have the smaller business jets, they can accommodate more, but if they have an influx of the larger, then it changes the dynamic. But what we have worked out is that they contact our operations team, Travis, and the rest of the ops team, Hannah, Lenel, and Pratt, Robert Pratt, and say, okay, we are reaching 50% capacity. And then we alert FAA that it's time to start slowing the rate of arrivals in, and that a closure of the ramps is imminent. Right, Travis and
then again, at 75,
Right.
there's another phone call to not only just slow traffic down, initiate ground stops to departing aircraft at other locations to buy some time
right.
until we can get some departures out of here, because a lot of the issues arise too, not just the large aircraft, is if, for instance, there's weather up north or something happens at Teterboro where a lot of the aircraft are bound for, and they're not leaving here because they have delays. It really just kind of cascades and
Just drill down just a little bit more. How do we exactly calculate a saturation point? Is it an algorithm, the size of the plane, this and that? But what is it? Is it a subjective thing? Or is it very objective?
I think it's each FBO identifies, they have parking plans, and so they are able to identify how many arrivals are, they actually communicate with us. They'll send us on a regular basis throughout the day the number of anticipated arrivals and anticipated departures. And so they have their own, mechanisms, their own software at the FBOs and their own ways of kind of identifying what's the most appropriate parking plan.
There is kind of an algorithm underlying this. It is not somebody going very subjectively, gosh, it looks like we're at 50%
And
saturation. Somebody else says, yeah, you should have called that a long time ago.
And we either have boots on the ground
Right.
or we're looking at cameras and it's like, well, they haven't contacted us yet, but that's not looking good right now. Plus you look at the like flight aware or something, be like, there's 30 more planes at airport or something.
So there is some underlying.
And we've also, with this TFR period begun initiating, we match the TFR times and dates with a notice to airmen for both ramps, saying 24-hour prior permission needed prior to entering, please call, and it's either their customer service number. So we try to reduce the number of just drop-ins that will surprise them that they didn't have
that's kind
scheduled.
of
All of a sudden,
the surprises. Looks like maybe we.
Yeah, John.
I'd just like to point to something that we can tell how we're going to trade on the ramp. So for the instance of one of the days we had exactly 35 departures, exactly 35 arrivals. There was different mix of aircraft mix, but we can see that and say, our situation isn't really going to change. It's just going to flip flop. Now, if we can see that we're going to trade more planes staying overnight by 10 to 15, that's when there's some alarm bells and go, okay, let's see how that affects our capacity. What percentage would that be? And then we actively communicate that with the authority. And we can confidently say, okay, in our overnight parking areas, we're at 50, we're at 60, we're at 70. We're getting to that point where we're done, right? Managing our heavy footprints to what was talked about earlier was the biggest critical part in being successful over this last weekend. I'd like to also point out that every TFR that we have had has had its own unique fingerprint of what's driving some of those, right? Super Bowl being one in the middle. This extended one was very different. And the first one also being very different because it was the first one where people held back and said, we'll wait a week before we jump into this. So there's really not been a normalization of traffic patterns relating to the TFRs just yet, but we're going to keep working through them. We're learning. And I think everything we have set up is working, and any levers we can pull, we have been, especially that NOTAM.
So is there a hard number at 75 that, or whatever percentage it is, that FAA or some other regulatory authority or guideline might say, this is beyond your call. When it's 75%, it's a closure. When it's 80%, you see what I'm saying?
It's not FAA, they.
I'm gonna ask you, who is it?
It's us.
Okay.
We're the ones who issue, in communication with the FBOs, we will issue those notices to airmen to make sure that they're aware and communicating with FAA so that those ground stops can happen at the right time, so that we don't have people who are en route and then all of a sudden there's nowhere for them to park once they arrive.
There's no number we can give you.
Right. Yeah, it's
situational and aircraft size.
It's a sliding scale based on the size of the aircraft, how many are leaving, how many are scheduled in. And that's why, again, having that live communication among us and being able to communicate that to FAA. And more importantly, having them support us in this, because we tried to do this over the holiday weekends, the very long weekend, and we thought we had it worked out at the local level, and it didn't get communicated to the controller. So they're like, we don't know what you mean by gridlock. And so that's why when I met with the head of air traffic in January, I was very adamant and said, we need a solution and you need to help guide this discussion, because this is a safety concern that we have based on what we just experienced over the holidays, that planes are showing up, nowhere to park them. There's no, and their perception is, well, why don't, or their recommendation is put them in an overflow area. Like, have you seen an area? We do not have overflow area. And so what we're trying to avoid is some of that gridlock that we saw the last time, with literally aircraft waiting on the taxiway and people getting upset in the airplane and wanting to depart, deplane on the taxiway, which is not ideal, right?
And having the 50% and 75% communicated to us, if airplanes are already in the air, it's not like they're gonna automatically be rerouted. So once we hit 75%, they'll start ground stopping airplanes at the airports that they're coming from, so that the ones that are in the air can still come in. There's still space for them, but then those ground stops will keep further inbounds from taking off and heading this way, so that we have time to get some departures out and make space, and then we can, cancel or adjust no times as needed.
They'll even adjust the miles and trail for the aircraft and like slow reduce airspeed to a certain, to just
Instead of
build
getting it
a little
four,
bit
you'll
more
get
of a
it
gap
five, but
between each
there'll be
arrival.
room. Yeah.
Let something leave so that others can come in.
They're actually treating each one of these TFRs as a Super Bowl event for us, which is really the way that it should have been the last time. But we are just very fortunate, that we have that level of commitment and focus from FAA. So they have the same people involved in these coordination calls that were involved during the Super Bowl last time it was in.
That's a 2-week period, where we were tracking visually, but every 30 minutes past an hour, we'd count how many people are at the observation area, and you'll see that in a minute. We're actively looking for a software device, something so we can track how much foot traffic, enters and exits the observation area. We're looking at a few options. The options we're looking at are Wi-Fi. They require Wi-Fi, so we would have to look into the option of extending our Wi-Fi from our administration building out to the observation area. So we are actively getting quotes and looking into it. It's definitely needed, as you'll see here.
So at one point, we'll be able to integrate those metrics into the monthly operations report along with takeoffs and landings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was great.
It'll be a fun metric.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
So with that, are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So I'll give you an update. So we put out a few trail cams. Here are some fun pictures we got. We got quite a diverse group of people. We have people who are very excited. We got little kids, people rollerblading, biking, bringing their dogs. So we got quite a diverse group of people who are coming to enjoy the observation area. These are a few views, another view of our observation area. These are on 2 of our peak days. So you can see how many people are enjoying it. And in this case, it's standing room.
Okay.
only in a, yeah.
Sorry, Miss question here. Do we have any landscaping anticipated for that area? Because given the interest, it looks a bit bare.
So this area here is designated for draining, so you can see there's like a draining area right there. There's, I don't think we have anything scheduled right now.
What we were actually thinking about around the concrete base is doing some like art in public places, maybe like a painting like we did with the mural. Because we've also talked about doing something with the dumpster enclosure, since you can't avoid it, it's right there. And so maybe doing as part of our beautification efforts on Airport Road as well, doing that as part of a call to artists. We get some ideas that maybe they could paint something along the line.
Get any grants either for that and or since this is a place that the public coming to plantings?
We can certainly explore that. See
Well,
this
can
grant
we just not, like, I mean, we've got money. I mean, can we just like approve a discretionary amount of? And I agree, it looks kind of bare.
It's popular
and
and you get
it's a
there.
great,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful facility, but around it looks a little,
Sparse.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, but to be fair, some of it hasn't grown in. I mean, the palm trees are just,
No, I-
Right.
yeah, it's,
Get around the edges and you don't want to obviously grow things so it
yeah, can't block
feeds
that.
Right.
sight lines,
Yeah.
but it just, I don't know.
We can certainly
It's like a
you know,
nice
put
house
together-
in the landscape.
we can certainly put together some ideas and come back and, see what you like. And what kind of.
I mean, I don't think the board needs to approve the landscape plan. I just think that,
Something.
if we, say, throw 10 grand at it or 20, whatever. Maybe they could get an idea of what it's gonna cost and we can approve the expenditure. I mean,
Well, if
there's
there's federal money or available.
yeah, there is, great,
Yeah.
yeah, let's grab it.
Yeah, continue on. Yeah.
There's another view of one of our busier days. You can see there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's quite a diverse group of people who visit from, at any given time. So here are some metrics. So as I mentioned earlier, between February 4th and February 15th, we collected this data. The 3 p.m. hour was found to be the peak period throughout all of those days consistently. The morning hours consist of mostly bicyclists, dog walkers, runners, and plane spotters. We've been getting a lot of plane spotters. And towards the afternoon hours, it's mostly young families and couples who are visiting. The families are typically to, get their elementary age children out of school, and then they'll bring them right over. Of the weekdays, Friday was the busiest. On the weekends, Sunday had the most foot traffic. The busiest day was February 9th, which saw 76 visitors, followed closely by February 15th, which saw 70 visitors. And during this 2-week period, we have seen an estimated 581 visitors.
Oh, nice. Jean, did you have a question?
Well, I have comment. Can you go back to the picture?
Sure. Tell me when to stop. This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would only point out that we're looking at it from our parking lot. I think for those people who are looking at it as they're coming on, they're not seeing the bareness that we're seeing here. So I don't think the problem is as big as it is. I also, at the ribbon cutting, I received, I had a comment from one of the people there wanting to know if we were going to bring over the Eagle Scouts contribution to the history of the airport.
Yeah, we talked about that, and that's certainly something that we are looking at. Yes, I think, I couldn't remember who mentioned it at the ribbon cutting, but I think someone else may have mentioned it too. So yes, we intend to do that.
Okay. If it needs to be updated, well, maybe we can find that scout, and bring it back here.
He may be flying. I'm not sure
Good
where he
idea.
is. Yeah, he was supposed to be maintaining it.
That's
but,
right.
But yes, I think that's a good idea to commemorate the world. It's part of the educational effort as well.
Right.
Yes, thank you for.
So the bottom line, Hannah, is about 600 people over a 2-week timeframe.
Correct.
That's incredible.
It's very popular.
Mate, is there some way that we can possibly monetize this a little bit?
We had some ideas.
Yes, we have a few ideas. Not.
Coffee cart.
Yeah, coffee, a coffee concession,
Are they still making?
and maybe in the summer snow cones.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say from a personal perspective, so I was out here, so my son got married February 1st. So I brought, of course, many of my family members out, including my two grandkids, James 6 and Zoe 4. They had a blast. They learned all about the gopher tortoises and the burrowing owls. And we actually saw a tortoise, which was a highlight, as well as the planes taking off. And then here comes Hannah. And I don't even think you knew we were there, but you came out with this swag bag. It was incredible. And you were giving away the little items to the kids that were there. And I just thought that was so touching and just another great way of extending the airport into the community by showing how much our visitors mean to us and acknowledging the enthusiasm from young people in particular by giving them the little portable binoculars and the little airplanes. So congratulations and thank you
Thank you.
for what you do.
And I have
Make
to
it extra
say,
special.
it's become a hobby for all of us office staff. Every once in a while, when we get some free time, we pop our heads out, see who's out there and bring out some goodies. And, we got some sunglasses for older kids. And so it's been a lot of fun.
Our ops team, they're each great ambassadors for the airport authority out there, especially Hannah. And Travis is not bad either. Even though he's like little kids, he's really good.
That's great, Travis.
Travis is a kid at heart.
Yeah.
He is.
At the peak time when I was there, I counted 31 people and eight cars in the parking lot. Which, and I think that was a sunny afternoon. I texted you on that. And I just think this is like totally not only meeting the goal, but exceeding it in terms of inspiring people, especially young people again, about the exciting careers available in aviation. So
And speaking of
congratulations.
cars, this may be a one-time halo effect, right? After the launch and all the PR that you get 600 people in 2 weeks, but it may not. It may gain legs, and then we're going to have to be thinking about parking.
Yeah.
Because the only real parking is, and we're all familiar with it. You may need more than that.
Right.
So perhaps there are ongoing conversations with FAU and maybe some renewed or regenerated relationships there can.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we noticed that too, that, but I think we built it with 4 parking spaces. And when you have 8 to 10 cars there at a time, it's not so bad when it's on a weekend, obviously, because, that there are other spaces available. But if we have our own events, there would be a little bit of a parking crunch over there, I think. It's a good problem to have, I think. But to your point, I think as time goes by, we'll be able to get some data and some trends on utilization and think about a phase 2.
Yes.
Are people allowed to park on that road that goes down to the stadium that's right in front, or would they be ticketed
Maybe that's FAU.
by the campus?
They're allowed to park in the designated parking spots. The only drawback is they'd have to traverse through the nature preserve to get to
Yeah,
unless they
try to
want to walk all the way
discourage
around.
that.
Yeah, that's
So kind of discourage that at the moment.
I got you.
And we have signs that say, stay on path specifically to avoid any burrowing nests.
Wildlife, that type of thing.
Right.
Anything else for Hannah on operations and noise? Thank you so much, Hannah. Item B, Information Technology Service Contract Extension. Scott's out of town, so Clara's handling this one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As the background memo indicates, we have a contract currently with an IT services provider that is expiring. And so in anticipation of that contract ending, we put out a request for proposals for new services with a defined scope and scoring, et cetera. We did receive, I believe, 7 proposals in total, so it was good response. However, I think just based on the way that the RFP was written, the request for proposals, and just the nature of the IT industry, none of them actually answered the questions that we were asking. And so we think that our best option is to recommend to you an extension for 6 months of the existing contract so that we can develop possibly a request for qualifications, which would allow the vendors to come in and present to us what services they would offer and us to sort of develop the contract based on the entity that we believe has the highest qualifications, the most qualified to do the work. So we, of course, will work with legal to develop that procurement process to make sure that it's, you know, in keeping with our procurement code. But I do believe that in this particular case, that RFP probably constrained them in their responses and therefore made it a little bit confusing for them. And so we recommend a 6-month extension to allow us time to go through a different procurement process. The terms would remain the same.
Very good. We're looking for a motion to approve the contract extension.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, are they amenable to a 6-month extension?
Yes,
Okay. No strings attached, just simply extending it 6 months?
it's the same rates and charges as they are. They actually responded to our bid, so they clearly would like to continue to support us.
They didn't answer any questions properly either?
It was, I think that's just the nature of the industry. It's so dynamic and, you know, a lot of it is, you know, we're such a small team too. So the number of computers and the services that we need sort of constrains us.
I hear you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item C, procurement code amendment. Rob, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Before you for approval this evening is an amendment to the Boca Raton Airport Authority Procurement Code. This code was last updated back in 2019. So as you may remember, the procurement code, we have 4 different purchasing categories, various dollars, thresholds, require different levels of our solicitation. This amendment is to increase our lowest category, category 1. The limit's currently at 10,000, so we are requesting an increase up to 20,000. And that brings us in line with, you know, some of the other local governments, the city of Boca Raton and the state of Florida as well. Also, Airport Management recommends approval of resolution 020325, authorizing an amendment to the Airport Authority Procurement Code.
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item D, amendment to the Executive Director's Employment Agreement. At our last meeting, the board directed Randy and Amy to bring back an amendment to the Executive Director's Employment Agreement, amending the performance incentive for 2024, providing the development of stretch goals along with an amendment to the monthly car allowance. Randy and Amy, please present.
Yeah, this, you know, kicking it off. I mean, we've had several meetings, you know, Amy and I met, Clara and I met, and, you know, we got the document that was sent out to everybody, which I think does a good job of incorporating everything that we discussed at the meeting. One thing I would, and I had forgotten about this, and I'm gonna ask for Amy's help in just kind of explaining the timelines and the payouts is, at the last contract renewal, which was 2022 or 2022, we brought forth to the board the notion of a retention bonus for Clara, which would be an accelerating one. This is paid out not every year, but at every contract renewal period. So in that I had forgotten that, and this is really not a, you know, this is indirectly performance related because it says that we want to keep Clara as our executive director, but it is more of a retention bonus. I mean, I would akin it to you're working for a public corporation, you get stock options and restricted stock and things like that to, you know, to motivate you to stay with the company longer term. And I think, you know, this does that. So I would ask Amy if you could maybe just kind of explain the timelines and the percentage payouts that we have going forward.
Okay, so let me just preface this by saying there are some changes to the language that are intended to keep the status quo. So we're not looking to change any of the terms. We're just looking to make sure that the terms stay implemented in the way that they would be implemented if we don't change her contract with what it allows for now. So under her existing contract, she was given an initial retention bonus representing the fact that, you know, you were incentivizing her to stay with you. And then there was a structure that at the end of the first 3 years, she would get a percentage. And that percentage would change every 3-year period over time, reflecting the window of her expectations in terms of her retirement period. And it also reflected what we were seeing in the industry and what the pay study was telling us about what kind of best practices were for executive retention. And so that's what her existing contract calls for. The reason why we have made some changes to the language is because by adopting this amendment, you're initiating a new initial term. And so we didn't want for her to lose ground with respect to her retention bonus. We wanted it to stay on the same schedule it would if she did not change her employment agreement. And so we took out the reference to the initial payment because she received that back in 2022. We're not suggesting that she gets another one.
That was a signing bonus.
Correct.
So it's,
That's right.
that's the way we should think of it. That's a one-off
That's right.
and it's not recurring.
So you'll see in 5F that language has been stricken, and that's why. It's not in my underlined copy, but what you will see is that the first retention bonus, which is a 20% payment, occurs at the end of 2025. That's when it would have occurred under her existing contract. So instead of saying at the end of the initial 3-year term, it now has a date certain, which is 2025. And then the 3-year terms start anew and the percentages remain the same. So it was 20% for 2025, 25% for the next 3-year period, 30% for the periods thereafter, reflecting the incentive as we're looking at kind of her expectations about when she would ordinarily want to retire.
It just shifts it by 3 months in the future. So instead of November of 1 year, it moves into February of the following year to be consistent with this execution, this new
That's
date.
right. That's right. So just so that you understand that language in this document, the other thing that you will see here is we in 5A, we updated her base salary to reflect the current base salary because it's been 3 years and her base salary changed over time.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking through something you just said,
Yes.
and we don't have the 5%. So in other words, the 5% increase.
No, it's
It's 30.
these are numbers certain, so it's
Yeah.
30% and that's where it stays.
Okay.
That's the
It's
cap.
over,
Okay.
it's every 3 years, it's
Okay.
30%.
Got it.
So you'll see in 5A, we've updated the salary and we've defined base salary so that it's made clear that what the concept of base salary is. And then the thing that kind of was the impetus for this discussion is in 5C, that's the performance bonus. And we've identified for the year 2024, the 30% bonus that y'all provisionally voted on for last time, and you affirming that today if you voted for this approval. And what this does is it says for every year after, the performance bonus as a concept stays at 0 to 20%, but then you've added in 5D, the stretch goal bonus that we've been discussing about, and that's a 0 to 10% range within the board's discretion. We have attempted to identify conceptually the idea of stretch goals, something that is above and beyond her essential duties and relates to the strategic position of the airport, its operational capacity, identifying significant new funding sources, improving the authority's position within the community as it relates to its operational capacities. And so these are exemplars of things that would be appropriate for a stretch goal. And then we've articulated in here that stretch goals are set initially in the in the budget process, and then they're visited throughout the year to make sure that your stretch goals remain relevant to events as they occur during the year. So that's what we've attempted to capture in the language in 5D. Then you will see the reference
Yeah,
Electronically.
that was sent out.
Came out yesterday.
We didn't print that out once.
I just want to see 5D.
You have a clean copy?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Lawrence has clean copy.
Well, 5D, yeah, it's the new 5D, yeah.
That's right.
And I think Amy did a really nice job of, attempting to define is what the stretch goals are for anybody that might have read that. And it's our idea to try to get these, established within the next 60 days.
5D, sure.
And, I think giving individual input from everybody to Clara, and then, Clara and, Amy and I would come together and, based upon that input, establish a recommendation to bring to the board to formalize those.
Okay, may I, is this an appropriate time to comment? I agree with everything that we have here. I think that we need to get really tight on the stretch goals. Remember our conversation at our last meeting? We were going through and throwing some things, on the wall and say, that's a stretch goal. And I'm kind of go, yeah, it's really not. I think we need some professional input that is very specific. I'm not sure that everything we have here, I would characterize as a stretch goal. So that's why I'm kind of hesitant when you give your examples. I would much prefer to have some input from ADK. How do other airports do this? And then we have conversation around that. And that, I don't need that you know that you even need to be this specific here. But once you identify types of stretch goals that aren't really quantifiable, and then all of a sudden you can't back from that.
Well,
So can we execute this in concept on the stretch goals and say stretch goals to be specifically identified by the board prior to blah, 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 something like that?
And that process is in here.
It is, but it is also, once you just say stretch goals such as.
Well, it says may
Yeah.
include, and the reason why it says may include is because there's a tension in this concept that I wanted to capture.
What?
A tension in the concept that I wanted to capture, that stretch goals isn't anything that y'all want it to be, because you want to have kind of bumpers around the notion so that you understand what is appropriate and isn't appropriate. And so that's why you're given a non-exhaustive list of things that are exemplars. But at the same time, you don't want to restrain your ability to identify appropriate things. So there's a conceptual component and then there's a procedural component. So you identify the specific stretch goals that would be the basis of any given bonus in the given year to which it is appropriate. The language that you see captured in 5D is intended to explicate the concept, but not restrain your ability to react to what your needs are. And so that's the language that you see about, for the purpose of this provision, a stretch goal is defined as a performance goal identified by the board and with consultation from the executive director. And it has language about extraordinary effort, strategic importance, and that stuff. That actually comes from, I did some research on executive stretch goals. And so that
one I'm fine with.
Yeah, and
But
so
when
that
I
language
see-
is defining the concept, but I wanted to give you examples of things like, if you will, buckets of concepts that would be appropriately considered when you're in the budgeting process.
But the bottom line is, we're not married or obligated to
That you are-
anything.
Or constrained by it.
Or
I think
constrained
that's
by
what you're
it.
talking about.
So-
Well, it's not so much constrained, it's also when I see, I like the language and it is totally appropriate to say that these stretch goal is defined as performance goal identified the board with consultation that accomplishes a task requiring extraordinary strategic, that is a strategic and not otherwise part of the ordinary responsibilities of the executive director. And that's where you start to get murky.
That's right. So if I can bounce off of you, so that's my concern. I'm having a hard time distinguishing between what an executive director does every day to earn, and I know what I'm saying as I'm saying it, to get paid the compensation to which that executive director anywhere, let alone here, is hired to do. When you're giving those bonuses, which are now 30%, that to me is for the exceptional delivery of that performance. So if we're going to have a stretch goal, for my comfort, it has to be so well defined and so far beyond what Clara does in her routine every day
that gets her the 30% bonus, which she earns every year because she's excellent at her job. And that's where it gets murky to me, and I don't
It's above
understand.
that. Let me just give the
Yeah.
example that made me stop reading. And it was, when you say as example, stretch goals may include tasks that expand the operational capacity of the airport and or improve the authority's strategic position within the aviation industry. I think improving the strategic position of the airport is such broad language that you do that every day.
Yeah.
And
But
The idea is to take this and make them, to what you're saying, Mitch, is very quantifiable, very measurable, very impactful. And I think, to
but in
me,
areas that are not already.
but to me, we're looking at not 9 or 10 things, but 2 or 3 or 4 things. It's a short list that's very impactful, quantifiable. And I mean, this is new ground for us, but stretch goals have become, I don't want to say common, but they're out there. And I think this is part of us being cutting edge and state of the art is the way we view compensation. And this is the first kind of whack at it. And I think getting, some counsel from ADK is critical,
Right.
to this. And, I think, we bring it back here and we have a discussion about it
And I don't disagree with any of that. I think that stretch goals, again, I've been in the corporate world, been in the Fortune 500 world, we always had stretch goals. We always had signing bonuses, and your example of it at the end of the contract period is akin to stock distribution.
Yeah.
Got a lot of stock. A lot of that was due to the marketing stuff. Hey, bring it on. But there is there's a difference between concept and how you identify it. And I think that's, again, when you say I use language like we improved the strategic position, I could name 10 things that Clara has done this year that has improved the strategic position. Because that's what we're always doing, is moving forward and thinking strategically. And it is great that we had no accidents but that's not strategy. There are other things above and beyond that we do.
So if I may offer just 2 ideas that we discussed, I'm sharing with you. I suggested that we do an analysis of both what Clara does, now, and also and analyze what her comparators do in the field to make sure that we understand what the day-to-day, responsibilities of someone in that category would normally be. Number 1, and then number 2, I have recommended a workshop for y'all to do some visioning to think about what stretch goals look like for you in the short term. I, in writing this language, was attempting to create enough space for you to do those things without having to hold this document in advance until you've done that. But you can do that too. So
My question
have those options.
Isn't there a way so that we don't hold this up and we, at a very high level, endorse the concept of stretch goals and simply say those stretch goals will be determined in X period of time in consultation with studies that we might make, as you said, with other organizations comparable to ours, as well as a professional like ADK within the aeronautical. So moving forward, endorsing the concept and say, we're going to get specific.
So you say ditch the language in.
At
in-
least that.
The may
Because then the
include
next
the
one is
example.
community. And my God, we've made that was one of the bases upon which Clara was hired. Those of you around then, we were not part of the Boca Raton community. We certainly were not. And when our first, I was, head of that committee, said, this is the challenge. That's what we want to do. It's a long haul because we had nothing for you to build on. You build it from scratch. So to say that, well, we take that and take it further, but that's what you've done from day one.
So to me, that's not a stretch goal, though.
But that's what we have here.
Yeah, but that's, right, that's why so I get a couple of,
Yes, sir.
First one is,
And then Gene.
you're spot on. I think it's, all of us take our jobs here at fiduciaries very seriously. And we need to be very clear about it, so we're not spending money that could be deemed later on not to be well thought and spent properly. First thing. Second thing is, and just as the lawyer part of me, looking at you, I want to make sure that there is a wall between what you're doing and what Clara is asking and needs to do. And what I'm saying here is that I think you can get very close to the line on how you're trying to counsel us and counsel her. And what I'm saying here is that you might want to kind of get some of your own advisors to help you with this, okay? So that it's not beholden upon you to do that, so that we can have more clarity and it'll be more of an arm's length.
And just to
kind
be
of
clear, I have not represented to Clara at all that I represent her or I'm giving her legal advice.
I have no doubt.
Just for the record.
No, I have no doubt that you did. But I can see how it can, the comfort level that we share and the rapport that we share can create something which I don't want later on to be judged with a microscope, to be perceived to be anything other than a negotiated contract that ultimately will benefit our executive director properly as well as us.
Well, Gene has a question.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, and I think we should carry this over to a workshop. I mean, if we were a sports team, it'd be pretty easy to determine what the stretch goals would be. I think you all agree on that.
Yeah.
But we're not, so I think it takes a little more in-depth.
Ready?
I, two things. I mean, I had a few employment contracts in my career and I always had my own counsel. So, which most certainly Clara is welcome to get, although it's not that complicated. And then secondly, I think we can do a workshop, but I don't envision, this, is there other stuff that we need to have a workshop?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it just for.
Right.
I think that would be a lot of energy. wasted. Because it's nothing that
If you
much.
could, and again, back to my question is, can we move forward with this contract? Can you get rid of your such as's and put some other phrase in there that clarifies it is our intention to provide a stretch goal framework opportunity. And those stretch goals will be defined by the board very specifically, that are time specific and quantifiable and all those things that goals are supposed to be.
Well, I think the board and the executive director is.
Yeah, whatever yes.
Agree.
However, whatever that language is, so that we don't have to, because like I say, I stopped when I saw this one about strategic and then I saw the one about community and I said, no, these are not examples. So just stop with the examples and say, we're gonna do it. We're gonna work out just as you would every year what the goal is going to be. And it has to be achievable. That is one of the, points in any goal. It has to be achievable. Can't put it so high you can't jump over it. And leave it at that. Here's
Okay.
our intention.
So
Can you do that?
I've removed the stretch goals may include language.
Okay.
So right now, the next sentence says the stretch goals should be identified as part of the authority's annual budget and should be reviewed along with the authority's annual budget to ensure the identified stretch goals remain applicable within the fiscal year. Do you want something more with respect to process?
Yep.
Bob, what I was thinking, following along with Cheryl, after you eliminate stretch goals should be identified by the board and the executive director.
Sure.
Because
Right.
you have a say in it, we have a say. And if you just include that, then I think we could approve this and we're not delaying.
The reference to the executive director is
in our-
earlier. It says.
Is it in there earlier?
It says for purposes of this
Okay.
provision, a stretch goal is defined as a performance goal identified by the board
Yeah.
with consultation
Okay,
from the.
That's all you
It's up there.
that's all you need.
Ba-boom.
And the only thing I would add would be that depending on the stretch goals are when they're reviewed and defined, does affect whether it can be included in the budget or not. So here we are. For doing this now, we've already done.
Included in the budget.
Well, we can amend our budget.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
At any given time. So leaving the language as everybody agreed it should be is fine. And if we have to amend the budget to do it the first time.
The first time.
Then
it
we
could
amend
be
the budget. And then going forward, we create a stretch goal bucket that gets allocated, and to the extent it is not achieved or whatever. So let's just say there's a 50 grand in there, or just to throw a number, and she hits some of them, she gets whatever she gets out of that, and whatever's left doesn't get spent, and it stays in the budget.
I was following until you got to numeric numbers. I mean, stretch goals as a performance behavior may or may not have a fiscal impact on your budget. You have a section in your budget that identifies.
Well, miscellaneous stretch goals.
No, but so we're saying budget only because your budget includes strategic goals that are in addition to what you're saying in terms of where your dollars and cents go. So it's part of your budgetary process, but it does not necessarily reflect that there's a financial impact to your operation.
So where would it come from then?
There isn't necessarily.
Doesn't have to be a line item in there for.
Some behaviors may have a line item component because it requires money in order to implement it, but some may simply be staff behaviors and you wouldn't change what their compensation is. The stretch goal bonus is defined as a percentage of her compensation at the end of the year.
That's all, and it's included in the budget.
So that wouldn't
Whether it's spent.
change depending on the.
Right.
On the
I think
behavior.
we all are not.
That was in our.
It's a variance if it's not spent, it's not
Exactly.
over, we don't accrue it
That's all
into
it
the
is.
next
You see it
year.
every month.
Right,
Yeah.
and you would identify in this, we talked about taking away the whereases, the such ases. But you would still leave in the language about the 10%. So it is
Yeah.
clear that
Yeah.
that's how much it is. That's not going to be subjective. So we don't go through the exercise of identifying them and go, oh my gosh, you're going to make 5%. So you are clear that would potential 10%, and that gets you what I think you're looking for. And that's the way it should be done. We want to keep you, we're very clear that it's best practices in Fortune 500 companies to do that. But I very much agree with my colleague here that we want to withstand every introspection on this topic and others from a
So-
fiduciary perspective.
Would you mind if I read it as it now has been edited so
Yeah.
that it's built into
Please
your
do.
motion?
So we're looking, just to be clear on this, Amy and the board, we're looking to approve this with
the language.
with the changed language. Because then there's a step behind this, which is, part of the change in this is we move the bonus opportunity for
Triggers
24.
what we already voted
So
on
we have
last
an opportunity to say, we can
Voted on it.
approve another 0 to 10% of a bonus for Clara for 2024.
Well, if you
This would be
approve
going
this,
forward.
if you approve this, her bonus for 2024 will have been 30%.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you,
This is a go forward.
Okay, so that will
Yeah.
just incorporate
It's a
that,
flat.
there's not a separate motion.
Right, and the reason we're
Okay.
tying it to the budget process is because we will be incorporating the 10% in next
Yes.
year's
But
budget.
but it does say, the reason I was asking about the motion, it says, the executive director shall be eligible for a performance bonus of 30% for the base.
But we approved that at the last board
We
meeting,
approved.
subject to finalizing this contract.
Right.
That's what I,
Correct.
am I following?
That's-
I mean,
that was-
that's,
If that's, if
That's why we
we
want
did
to
that,
approve
that's
it.
fine.
that's why I want to
Okay,
approve it at this
okay.
And
meeting
what-
Okay,
with this
okay,
edit.
okay.
And then it also triggers the automobile,
Right.
Yeah.
allowance.
Clawback, basically.
Okay, Amy, do you want to read the new language so we can bring this?
Bring this to a close.
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, I know it's a little bit of
That's all right.
of wordiness, but it'll
Yeah.
help, I think, for the record. So based on this conversation, what I have on my screen and what will become the basis of your motion, the 5D now reads, stretch goal bonus. In addition to the performance bonus identified above, executive director shall be eligible for a stretch goal bonus if the board concludes that the executive director has made significant progress towards and/or achieved one or more stretch goals. For the purpose of this provision, a stretch goal is defined as a performance goal identified by the board with consultation from
Goal
exec-
or goals. It should be more than one. There'll be a goal.
I think actually start again because I think it actually reads
At the
properly.
beginning, she did.
Start that sentence again, Amy, if you don't mind.
For the purpose of this provision, a stretch goal is defined as,
Okay.
as a performance goal identified by the board with consultation from executive director as further defined herein that accomplishes a task requiring extraordinary effort that is of strategic importance to the authority and that is not otherwise part of the ordinary responsibilities of executive director. Stretch goals should be identified as part of the authority's annual budget and should be reviewed along with the authority's budget to ensure the identified stretch goals remain applicable within the fiscal year. The stretch goal bonus may range from 0 to 10% of the base salary for the upcoming year, in addition to the performance bonus awarded. So that's what 5D would.
I'm fine with that.
Looking for a motion to approve.
One last thing I just want to make clear. So we talked about the car allowance.
Can I
that-
jump in 1 second? I apologize. The stretch goals bonus should, I would say the total of all stretch goals bonuses should be between 1 to 10%.
Zero.
Or aggregate, or
Yeah,
only use a
yeah.
big fancy word.
I think that's the intent.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely the intent. Yeah.
Yeah, but,
No, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
yes, that's
Yeah.
good.
yeah.
That it-
And goal versus goals, you know.
Okay. So I put in the aggregate of the stretch goal bonus may range.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
So, 5J, Roman numeral little I, automobile, allowance. We went from 800 to 900 per month. And to address the, concept of, compensation for fuel and auto maintenance, it was suggested, and I have put in here, that it is a flat fee that is intended to represent a reimbursement, but does not function like a reimbursement. So it is not, she goes to,
Right.
you
Just
know, the auto
get it.
place and whatever.
Yeah, 1 year, 1 month it's 90, another.
Right.
So it's 250 per month as a flat rate with the intent that it's meant to offset fuel and auto.
When she buys those $5,000 high performance tires.
It's fine.
When we identify numbers like 250, which by the way, that seems fairly reasonable to me, but have we done like our due diligence to determine, well, that's about how much it would take if you are driving X number of miles a month and gas is X. I just want it to be grounded in hard data.
What's the IRS number?
Yeah.
Well,
I
be 55. If you were,
If you're driving a Tesla,
61.
you don't have it.
There you go.
well, if you recall at the last meeting, I brought this up because, starting in the fall, Ms. Bennett for 2 years is going to be representing the airport authority at a bunch of Chamber of Commerce events. And it'll be an extraordinary amount of extra driving. That I believe she should be compensated for because again, she's representing us at these public events. So that's why,
I'm just trying to,
I just threw
want
it.
to
I
be
mean,
grounded in something,
yeah.
but then next year, maybe not, when you're not present. I'm just saying, again, to Mitch's point of we want our actions to be sensible at every level.
Understand.
Seems reasonable to me, even if you have to back into it, if we could have some back data that says, IRA says this or IRS, what.
All right, anything else? Looking for a motion.
Are we moving, making a motion to the amendment?
Yes, what you read.
Just the amendment,
Okay, yeah.
The total as amended.
The amended as corrected.
The amendment, that's correct. That's correct.
It's what you have
Yeah, I guess that is.
overlaid by what she read, which is not what you have.
I understand, but we're just the amendment, not the agreement.
No, it's the agreement with the whole
Within
thing.
the amendment.
That's the agreement, yeah.
It's the whole thing.
As amended, the agreement as amended.
Okay, well, point of procedure, can we do that since we actually didn't even get this till last night? Can we go ahead and?
Yes, it does not violate any of your sunshine obligations to make amendments here in the public.
I'm talking about the agreement itself.
You can make an amendment to it, and as long as the other party agrees to the amendment and is amenable to executing it, then once you voted on it, then that can happen.
So it was already on the agenda, if that's what you're kind of referring to.
It was on the agenda, but we never saw this until last night.
I don't know that it matters.
It's consistent with what was approved at the January meeting, that motion, like the various
I just want
motions.
to make sure we're,
It's just the detail.
I did have one thing, under five G, there's other benefits. We're getting her and I assume that she has this already to some degree, a $500,000 universal life policy. We
That
have
does not change, yes, that's a term that's in the existing
okay,
agreement.
so we're just extending that policy.
It doesn't change, the language of the existing agreement does not change, so that policy is there and will continue.
We'll continue, okay. And as well as the key man policy. Are we writing a new policy or are we just
I
extending?
think we're continuing, those terms do not change, right, Alex? There's no reason, because it's a new effective date, to change those policies that are in effect.
Keep it.
We're not making any changes to any of those policies.
Okay.
Anything else? Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, authority board member requests and reports. So we have a couple of things as handouts here. We have this wonderful handout that was created on noise abatement. Thank you very much. And then Clara passed out this brochure, executive summary of an airport cooperative research program that she participated in. So for homework tonight.
Meets tomorrow?
And item number 11, public comment. Florence, anything? Public comment?
There's none.
Item 12, other business. Anything else to come before the board?
I'd like to throw out an
Yes, ma'am.
idea that as we were talking and getting excited about the potential for the observation area. So what if we were to just think about wild and crazy kind of goal out there?
Where you going with
You know how we go to, I think it's down in Fort Lauderdale, they have the exploratoriums, right? The kids go in and they learn all this. What if this were this was one of the things that was part of an aviation exploratorium? And it was a joint venture between FAU. It's gonna halo effects on us, it's aviation, and that's what this observation is part of it, and the city.
Get land involved, some LA University.
You know,
Right, yeah.
it's a big hairy
I like-
goal, but you've
Big
got
hairy
a
goals.
new, so you've got
First.
I don't know.
a new president at FAU.
Right, good, right.
You've got folks at the city who would probably love to have yet another thing that they thought of, and I didn't say that. And
Strike that.
would be, highly beneficial. It would be an attraction,
I think that's
increase our,
definitely something worth
visibility.
exploring, literally.
I like it.
I like it too.
So maybe that's something you throw out and think.
Yeah, I think that's great. Anything else? Seeing none, the next meeting is scheduled for March 19th at 5 PM. Our location is TBD. Meeting adjourned.
This room is not available.
I'm out.